No. I guess maybe you could tell Megan that we're going to do a picture if you don't mind.
Good evening and welcome to the combined meeting at 5 p.m. on January 12th, 2022. Roll call, please, Ms. Leary.
Ms. Acosta? Here. Mrs. Cataspati?
Present.
Ms. Fabry?
Here.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Here.
Mr. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. Rivera?
Here.
Mr. Sabrana?
Present.
Mr. Silva?
Here.
Ms. Spinelli?
Here. In compliance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law, commonly referred to as the Sunshine Law, the Vineland Board of Education has caused notice and posting for this meeting to be sent to the following: announcing time, place, therefore, agenda, etc. The Daily Journal, NJ Today, the Press of Atlantic City, Nuestra Comunidad, Visto Bueno, the Clerk for the City of Vineland, and the administrative offices of the Public Bulletin Board. Tonight we have students from Memorial Elementary School to represent our flag salute. Ms. Cataspati and Mrs. Fabry will be coming down to give you some certificates. Ms. Leary, do we have a resolution for executive session?
Yes, we do. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the City of Vineland School District will convene into executive session for the following reasons as outlined in NJSA 10:4-12. Discussion is about pending litigation matters and contract negotiations and any matters falling within the attorney-client privilege, to the extent that confidentiality is required in order for the attorney to exercise his ethical duties as a lawyer.
Thank you. Any special presentations tonight? We're going to take a motion and a second for the executive session. Motion?
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mrs. Cataspati?
Yes.
Ms. Fabry?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes. Mr. Yano, do we have any special presentations tonight?
Yes, we do. Thank you. We have our HIB report. We have the update on our, linked on our agenda. And just wanted to note that we had 7 incidents total. We had 3 that were founded, 2 unfounded, 1 that was inconclusive, and another one that was some founded was the finding. So that information is on our agenda. Thank you.
Approval of the minutes from the December 8th, 2021 combined meeting. Motion and second.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mrs. Cataspati?
Yes.
Ms. Fabry?
Abstain?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes. Thank you. Next on the agenda, committee reports. Do we have any committee reports this evening? Okay. Public meeting report by our board solicitor.
Thank you. As the board realizes, at our reorganization meeting, we experienced some technical difficulties. There's always a concern under Sunshine Law that all procedures were followed. So, Madam President, it's my recommendation that you accept a motion, a second, and approval of the following motion. The Vineland Board of Education hereby ratifies and affirms all actions taken at the January 5, 2022 reorganization meeting, including the reading of the Sunshine Law statement, the swearing in of the newly elected board members, the election of officers, and the voting approving the superintendent's recommendations, all as set forth in the written agenda outline for the January 5, 2022 reorganization meeting. The Sunshine Law permits a board to ratify what was done in case there were any difficulties at that meeting. So you should accept a motion in a second.
Any questions or comments? Motion and second.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Ms. Leary.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mrs. Cataspati?
Yes.
Ms. Fabry?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next agenda item this evening, a motion to suspend the bylaw 0164 to provide for this meeting only that the public comment on agenda items and any matter be limited to 3 minutes for each speaker. Motion,
So moved.
second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mrs. Cataspati?
Yes.
Ms. Fabry?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes. Public comment on agenda items or any matter, please limit yourself to 3 minutes. Have any yellow sheets?
Yes, first we have Jeffrey Martin. The topic will be COVID-19 and special education.
Good evening, members of the board and Mr. Yano. I'm speaking tonight out of great fear and concern for my students, who I feel are being disproportionately impacted by this pandemic and the lack of a district-wide response to the dramatic increase of COVID cases. I'm a special education teacher, so all of my students have IEPs to address their learning disabilities and communication impairments. Instruction in our classroom is challenging enough without the added stress of juggling social distancing, instructing quarantined students online, enforcing proper mask wearing, sanitizing, and hand washing, but I do it. My classroom assistants and I follow the rules to keep our students safe and healthy. But I worry that these safeguards are no longer sufficient in protecting my students from this harmful and incredibly infectious virus. I worry that without immediate action from central administration, that we will face dire consequences related to the virus itself or from the lack of adequate staffing that we find ourselves with. I thought the hardest part about being a new teacher would be teaching my kids to read. I thought it might be hard to create SGOs and manage IEP goals. Parent communication is something I thought might be difficult. Never did I imagine that the hardest day of my short tenure would come the week of Christmas when I had to tell a 7-year-old student that she would have to leave school for 10 days. She looked at me with fear and confusion. She has a learning disability, has a hard time reading and writing, but here she is having to figure out what all of this means. Our students today have to navigate the unimaginable. And what has our response been as a district? In school one day, virtual the next, but back in person the following week. I have students on the autism spectrum. This instability and constant disruption to their routine is detrimental to their education and their mental health. To add insult to injury, when there are late buses, which is every day at this point, it's often a special education bus or two not arriving until 4:30 or 4:45. So now special education students are being forced to further expose themselves to students on their bus. What is being done to protect these students? Virtual instruction does not have to be the only answer to this problem either. As a district, we might need to be a little more creative on our solutions, but virtual instruction is not the only remedy. Believe me, I know the shortfalls of virtual instruction. You try teaching 11 students who don't know how to read how to share their screen on Zoom. But these last-minute emails that were virtual one day and in person the next are not an adequate response to this challenge. My students are missing out on so much instructional time because as we're trying to recover instruction from the losses of last year and the year prior, plus the instability of this year, we're also asked to inflict an unprecedented number of assessments on our students. I fear that the decision makers look at the road ahead of us as if there's a choice, student safety or quality of education. And I don't think it has to be one or the other. We can adequately instruct our students while simultaneously keeping them safe. Other districts have implemented a temporary abbreviated schedule to limit the time students are exposed, especially at lunchtime. Districts have also offered stipends to parents to drive their students to school to reduce the number of children on the bus. If virtual instruction is the answer, then there are ways to make that easier for staff as well. Investing in GoGuardian, Nearpod, and virtual resources for staff and students is essential. Virtual instruction is nearly impossible for some students in our district, so maybe adopting some sort of hybrid schedule might be something to look at. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, just as I'm sure many people don't. But what I do know is that it's unfair to continue as if nothing has changed, to keep going down this road of uncertainty where teachers are fearing for their health and the health of their students. I can personally say at my school, I feel like I'm coming into contact with someone who's at least 1 degree removed from COVID every day. To wrap up, I know that many board members have said in the past, our kids need to be in school. I don't think you'll find a district employee who disagrees with that. Obviously, our kids need to be in school. But that's half the battle. How can we keep our kids in school? How can we avoid the inevitability of a 10-day quarantine? Or I guess that'll be 5. How do we ensure our students are being educated by their teachers and not merely supervised by their substitutes? No response is no longer acceptable.
Mr. Martine, can you wrap it up?
Yep.
Thank you.
And I don't think it's fair to my students, and it's not fair to their parents to work so hard to provide them with a safe home environment suitable for learning. So all of this is to say, I think something needs to be done district-wide to address the recent rise in COVID cases. I think it disproportionately affects my students who have IEPs, and I'm just hoping that you guys keep my students in mind as well as all special education students in the district. Thank you.
Next, we have Tyra Myerson. The topic is COVID and assessments.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Central Administration, Board of Ed, and Mr. Yano. I'm first here to just follow up on the last time I spoke at the podium about the very concerning issue of overwhelming assessments of our students. I haven't heard much on that front. I do know, I guess, that there was a meeting from the curriculum team, but I haven't heard anything from Central Administration either. We really are struggling with this assessment schedule and this grading policy. It is so unfair to our students. It is so unfair. And it's unfair to teachers. We are killing ourselves every day trying to get tests in. We're not teaching anymore, we're testing. That's all we're doing. Our kids have, and I teach first grade, so kindergarten first, maybe second. I mean, we're like forgotten almost because our kids can only handle so much. I mean, it's really, anyone come in any day of the week, come see me do a test, and you will see it is a struggle. And I am really feeling so bad for these students that are inundated. And then we get, reminders and emails about give this assessment by this date, do this assessment, put it in, link it, do the link it, 1, 2, 3, 4. It is atrocious. If I was a parent and my child will soon be in the Vineland Public Schools, I'm very concerned that she's going to take all these assessments. This is insane. So, I just want to follow up, and I just want some answers or at least some kind of solution, because there's been no solution. It's just, here's some more, give more. My next issue or concern is on behalf of countless teachers in the district. The CDC now says that cloth masks are ineffective, but we gave all of our teachers cloth masks, our students get masks, cloth, but Omicron, it doesn't matter. So we would like to request that the district provides N95 masks for all teachers and students, or teachers, whatever's feasible, because we know that it's not doing anything for the safety of anybody. They're ineffective. And also last, we just need a clarification because we're hearing different things about the quarantine for those testing positive, on which day we can return. There's just a lot of discrepancies. Is it 5 days? Is it 10? It's just like, we're just hearing so many different things. And, when teachers can resume instruction, we just are at a loss, and it just doesn't make sense. And also teachers are getting infected, and our staffs are stretched to the max, and it's just not fair. My time's up. Thank you so much.
Next, we have Cindy Weber. The topic is COVID.
Hello, my name is Cindy Weber, and I reside in Vineland with one child enrolled in Vineland High School. Tonight, I'm here to discuss the district's response to COVID-19. Mid-December, our area started to see the effects of a surge that we would later find out would far exceed our previous records. Today, ICU numbers are at the worst they've been. Our positivity rate is nearly 30% of tests, obviously excluding any at-home rapid tests. So far, as a community, we have yet to see what metric is being used to decide if schools can remain open. At least one board member stated that the board was reviewing if VPS could open safely. That public comment has now since been deleted. How high do things need to get? Hospitals in Delaware are entering a crisis standard of care. Our own adult ICU has reached 87% of capacity. My children, due to their health history, are an automatic transfer to AI DuPont in Delaware. Inspira Health will not treat them. What is Vineland's plan? A copy-paste of the plan for the general workforce. Under these guidelines, a student can knowingly be infected with COVID and eat lunch with their peers. What plan does Vineland have to separate those knowingly infected from other students? I didn't see one. And the district employee that I asked didn't have an answer. I realize these guidelines come from the CDC, but even they say to keep away from at-risk populations and mask at all times. They even go on to say a well-fitting mask. We heard from a district employee that that's not being provided. Additionally, what plan is there for gym class? Currently, gym allows for exceptions to mask wearing. So we just stick the student knowingly infected in a room of maskless children and cross our fingers? I realize that for most children, a COVID infection will not be life-threatening, but it will be for others. School districts have long since taken the stance that it's worth the inconvenience of the majority to keep the vulnerable safe. A perfect example of this is allergies. Schools understand that allergies occur in varying forms and exposure to an allergen can cause death. The response is to limit exposure. Vineland itself has adopted this policy. In closing, I ask for answers. The parents of Vineland, the staff of Vineland, we deserve answers. Every single day, we trust VPS with the health and safety of ourselves and our children and our families. We deserve to see the metric you're using to keep the most important people in our life safe. Thank you.
Is there anyone else this evening that would like to speak at the podium? Okay, thank you. Our next agenda item is motions and resolutions. The superintendent recommendations for discussions and approvals by the board.
Okay, discussion regarding personnel items 1.1 through 1.3. 1.1, approval of the following: retirements, resignations, terminations, leave of absences, employment transfers, substitutes, and extracurricular activities. 1.2, approval regarding the salary increment withholding for an employee whose name is on file with the business administrator effective September 1st, 2022. 1.3, approval regarding adjusted daily pay rates effective January 13th, 2022. Substitute principal from $300 to $350 per day. Substitute assistant principal from $250 to $300 per day.
Questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
So second.
Second. Roll call, please, Ms. Leary.
Ms. Acosta? Mrs. Cataspati?
Yes.
Ms. Fabry?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Requesting discussion regarding procedure and operations 2.1 through 2.5. 2.1, the approval of trips, district travel, and NJTSOL NJBE Spring Conference. 2.2, approval regarding bus evacuation drills and on file with the board secretary. 2.3, approval authorizing the business administrator to enter an affiliation agreement for the 21-22 school year for dual credit with Camden County College. 2.4, approval regarding the BA business administrator authorizing a research proposal with Rowan University titled Patterns in Bilingual Program Outcomes. And 2.5, approval regarding the business administrator authorizing the New Jersey DOE English Language Learner 3-year plan submission form.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please, Ms. Leary.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mrs. Cataspati?
Yes.
Ms. Fabry?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mrs. Sobrana?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Discussion regarding finance items 4.1 through 4.8. 4.1, approval of the budgetary transfers for general, school-based, and ECBA for November 2021. 4.2, approval of the board secretary and treasurer reports for November 2021. 4.3, approval regarding the placement of special education students. 4.4, approval regarding acceptance of the following grant: Southern Coastal Regional Employee Benefits Fund Wellness Grant Program in the amount of $30,000. 4.5, approval regarding the acceptance of the following grant: New Jersey Council for the Social Studies selected a VHS teacher for a research grant in the amount of $1,200. 4.6, approval regarding the submission of the fiscal year 2022 Elementary and Secondary Education Act ESEA application amendment, as noted on our agenda, from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. 4.7, approval regarding the cancellation of the list of checks from the budgetary account provided and on file with the Secretary of the Board. 4.8, approval regarding a resolution appointing the following individuals to Newfield National Bank depositories for the Winslow Elementary Student Activity Account for January 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2022.
Questions on comments for 4.1 to 4.8? Seeing none?
Discussion regarding 4.9 through 4.15. 4.9, approval regarding professional services purchased for Petway Elementary School in the amount of $2,000. Professional development for K-5 staff with Reader's Workshop on February 18th, 2022. 4.10, approval of a shared service agreement with the Cumberland County Improvement Authority for HVAC construction management design services. 4.11, approval of a resolution authorizing the competitive contracting process for additional software and hardware for the district's transportation module. 4.12, approval regarding the following contract for Marie Durand School HVAC system replacement bid number 2021-22. Contractor Falaska Mechanical, total contract amount $4,336,000. 4.13, approval regarding the vehicle list, which is on file with the board secretary to be auctioned on Gov Deals. 4.14, approval of the 2021-2022 Joint Transportation Agreement between Atlantic County Institute of Technology and the Vineland City Board of Education. And finally, 4.15, approval regarding the following Cumberland County Regional Cooperative Transportation Initiatives. A, 2021-22 bid number 7, 2021-2022 quoted contracts, addenda, and jointures as listed on A, B, C, and D of our agenda.
Questions and comments for 4.9 through 4.15? Seeing none. A motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, please, Ms. Leary.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mrs. Cataspati?
Yes.
Ms. Fabry?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes. Next agenda item, regular agenda items, we have none. Number 11, proposed items for review and discussion and adopted by the board members. Discussion regarding the first reading of the following bylaws. Bylaw 0167, public participation at board meetings. Bylaw 0164, conduct of the board meeting.
Ms. Spinelli. As you recall, over the past few meetings, we've done a motion suspending the bylaws to allow 3 minutes instead of 5. Rather than continuing to do that, this is a recommendation to amend the bylaws to permanently provide for the 3 minutes. So we have a first reading, and then we'll have a second reading next month.
Okay, agenda item number 12 is approval of bills occur. Okay. Number 12, approval of bills occurred in November 2021. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mrs. Cottaswati?
Yes.
Ms. Fabry?
Abstain?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes. Thank you. Number 13, there's no emergent items. Old business. Any old business from board members? Any new business? Okay. We'll start off with our board member remarks, and we'll start with Mr. Rivera.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for each and every one of the individuals that stepped up and commented tonight. As always, we take each and every one of your comments seriously. We take them to heart. It's a very difficult decision, whatever we decide. And sometimes it's not even up to us. We just have to pray that the best decisions are made for the greater good. It's never going to be a decision that everyone's going to be happy with. One side or the other is going to be upset. But know that us as a board and the administration, we do it for the best interest of the students. We don't do it for our own interest. I mean, I can speak for myself, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for the rest of the board. We don't do it for our own interests. So just bear with us, keep us in your prayers, and thank you for your continued support, and we'll do the best that we can. Thank you, and have a nice night.
Mr. Sabrana.
This pandemic just continues to be a nightmare. All of us up here, we want kids in school because we know that's where they're going to get the best quality education. Certainly there's some students that thrive in a virtual environment, but not many. To the limit of the law, what's reasonable, what we can do, what we're allowed to do, we want kids in school. And it's up to the administration, Mr. Milano, to pursue that as vigorously as possible. I don't like emails, text messages, phone calls. I don't even like the discussion that goes on in my house with the teacher I live with about this. And I know in my own family, you know, there's a student or two who hasn't thrived in the last year and a half. And I worry about what the long-term results of that are going to be in terms of their, you know, their growth. If you told me in 2020 this was still going to be going on, I would have thought that was impossible. Well, it's still going on. And I really don't know, unless somebody has some magic bullet. Even the experts disagree on what we're going to do. Cloth mask, paper mask, N95, 3 vaccinations, 5, 2, 4, 1. It's way beyond my ability to comprehend. And all the years I worked here, I never could imagine anything this challenging to the environment that we have for our kids. And I just pray that it ends sooner than later, just like this winter. Thank you.
Mr. Silva?
No comments at this time.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Holmes?
Nothing at this time.
Ms. Acosta?
I would also like to thank everyone that spoke, Ms. Martine, Ms. Weber, and, I'm sorry, Mr. Martine, Mrs. Meyerson, and Mrs. Weber. Certainly your concerns are valid. As a parent with a child still in school, I worry about her every single day. So I think that the superintendent is keeping a very close eye on the numbers as we go through, and hopefully, and I understand, I mean, this is a very fluid situation, and from one day to the next, things change. I certainly understand how difficult it must be, Mr. Martine, particularly with your student body, the kids in your classroom, having to go back and forth. To the extent that we can try to keep the same routine for them, I think that's what we're trying to do, and limit the virtual as much as possible. But I don't know that any of us can really say for sure what's going to happen. As we continue to roll along, if cases continue to go up, there may come a point in time where the superintendent, along with the board, and with feedback from the community, we may have to go virtual. I don't know. I can't really say. But I do trust that there is communication, and I would hope, I'm sure that there is communication between our various schools and central administration, so that we can provide as safe as possible. I don't think that there's any way to completely keep everyone safe from being infected. It's just, I don't know how that's possible. It's troubling, it's concerning with respect to the shortages of teachers and, substitutes. There are a lot of issues. I just want you to be aware that it's worrisome to us as well, and we're trying to find solutions. But thank you so much for sharing, and I pray that all of your families, all the kids, are as safe as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Fabry?
Good evening. As a Green Board member, I have a lot to learn. I have a lot of listening to do, and I'm going to have a lot of questions. This year I had asked to be on the Transportation Committee because as I've sat in that audience for 6 months, it became something that was really passionate to me. My background is in manufacturing systems and process improvement, so I'm thrilled to be able to provide that service to the Transportation Department. We're not going to stop having driver shortages anytime soon, so we need to kind of take a look at a bird's eye view of the systems and see how can we improve, even if it's minute to minute, tens of minutes to hours. Any baby steps that we can take would be great to have our kids home safely and on time. And just thank you all, and looking forward to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cataspati?
First, I'd like to congratulate again Mr. Silva and Ms. Acosta for winning and coming back again, and to welcome our new board member, Ms. Fabry. To our Safety Patrol members from Mennies, thank you for coming out and leading our flag salute. Mr. Martine, Ms. Meyerson, and Ms. Weber, thank you for taking your time to come out and give us your recommendations, your thoughts, your concerns. Believe me, we do hear you. I concur with my board members here. We have everybody's best interest at heart. You have to remember, this is new for all of us. This pandemic is something that none of us have ever dealt with, and we're doing what we can and what we feel and our administration feels that can happen. We take everything you say seriously, and we listen to everything. The administration writes everything down, and we're going to do what we have to do, as Ms. Acosta said, to make sure that everybody's safe, or try to, but it's at some point we just don't know anymore what's going to happen. But we are here for you. I do appreciate you guys coming out. It means a lot. We get to hear different versions of different things that can happen. I heard some things here tonight that I didn't know. So I do appreciate that. As Mr. Rivera said, please pray for us. We pray for everybody in this district. And everybody have a good night, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Mr. Yano?
Thank you. We appreciate the recognition and the opportunity to speak this evening. It's exciting times. Just a few updates. Just want to remind everyone that yesterday, Governor Murphy reauthorized his executive orders for face masks being required in our school buildings, and also the testing of staff members, also, and the verification of COVID vaccine status for our employees. Our Human Resources Department, our leadership team continues to do a great job making sure that we are in compliance with those executive orders. I also want to point out that the COVID guidelines continue to change. Every week there's a new update. Tonight, before we came into this meeting, we received the latest update from the Department of Health, COVID-19 public health recommendations for our local health departments for K-12 schools. Last week, we received an update from the CDC on how to address COVID isolation and quarantine standards for school buildings. So as we learn, we try to meet as quickly as possible. Last evening, Dr. Sneven, myself, district nurses, Emma Lopez, and our district nursing supervisor met to discuss the new guidelines, which are slightly different than the previous guidelines. So every change causes some confusion. All of our nurses are now up to speed. This Friday, there's a county-wide discussion of the new updated guidelines as well, where we will be talking about how, if a child or a staff member is tested positive with COVID, how the timeline starts with a day 0, and that by day 6, if there are no symptoms, that employee or child is allowed to return to school with a well-fitting mask. So there are a lot of questions about what type of mask should be used, who should be supplying those masks. We're still unpacking all that. Our facilities team continues to purchase masks for schools, but the primary distributor or supplier of masks for students are our families. We ask that you provide your children with a mask that works for your child, hopefully a high-quality mask, and that if it's a cloth mask, it's cleaned often. Our staff as well bring their masks to work, and if they have an accident or it breaks and you need a new one, we have a supply on hand, but we don't have enough masks for every child every day from now to the end of the year. That would be, you can't buy that many masks. It's impossible to find on the market right now. I also want to point out that we have updated our COVID mitigation strategies for our athletics programs with the work of our athletic director, Donnie Robbins, our nursing supervisor, the high school principal, and the athletic directors for our region. You'll see some updates where concession stands are being closed. We're limiting the number of folks inside of the gym or the wrestling area or the pool. Everyone is required to wear a mask. Spectators for home games, but not necessarily for visiting players as well. So all these updates are going out. This has been instituted system-wide, so you'll see some changes, but we're going to continue with our extracurricular programs, inclusive of athletics. I want to also just make sure our Board of Ed members are aware that this team that you see before you has a daily conversation, a deep dive into staffing numbers, building readiness, and school leaders, our principals and our assistant principals, were on calls constantly looking at how many staff have called out, where are staff in the process of their COVID isolation or quarantine, so we know if we can open a building. We are aware that in some cases we are being very flexible because the focus is to keep kids in school. As we are very well aware and stated here by many of our board members, the best place for a child is an in-person program. Some districts, because of staffing issues, have had to change their school day. Kids lose when you lose instructional time. That's a last-ditch effort. We want to keep our children in school for a full-day program as long as possible. But if the conditions worsen and we have recommendations from our local health department that we need to go virtual, of course we will have that conversation. But we need to balance that with the needs of our special education students who cannot engage in a virtual environment and need to be in an in-person environment as well. So we're working with our curriculum team. Our supervisors are out in the buildings teaching classes, supporting at the ground level. Our building leaders are working incredibly diligently through the night to make sure the building is staffed and ready to go. And our teachers are being exceptionally amazing at the work that they're doing. So I just want to let everyone know that this is a daily, multi-point conversation that we're having, diving into those numbers to make sure we're ready to go. And every day starts with a thank you for being here today. We appreciate you. Let's get the day going. And at the end of the day, we say thank you again, and we move on to the next and start planning and preparing. That's all for my comments this evening, and I look forward to continued conversation with our new committee structure and our board members that we have ready to engage with us on our plan and prep for the budget development, and also the work that we're going to do around transportation and our facilities work that we have planned that's upcoming as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to thank everyone for being patient with me tonight as I work through my first meeting. So just stay with me through this process. I'm trying my best. Everybody have a good night. Look forward to seeing everyone, and stay safe. Motion to adjourn, and don't forget we have executive session. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Too bad.